Welcome back everyone. You join me on what is an absolutely freezing February afternoon in what is effectively almost an open barn, and the only heat source that I have is a very noisy shop heater which I have to leave off when filming the sacrifices I make for you guys. So forgive me if I'm a little bit sniffly. I look forward to the summertime when it's going to be much more pleasant to work down here. But anyway, if you've been following the series so far, you'll know that I've been putting a Storm Thorgerson Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon inspired design on my fretboard, and I've made some good progress so far in putting this rainbow design below the 12th fret with heartbeats in epoxy on all the other frets. If you haven't seen those videos, it might be a good idea to go back and watch them now. I plan to put a prism on the 12th fret, as you might expect, and then a single colour heartbeat line going up the rest of the neck as well. Now let's talk materials. When I imagined this inlay, what I really wanted to do was, rather than have a solid block of one colour, say silver or white, I really wanted to try and have a gradient to it or some kind of variation in it. I didn't think that mother of pearl would look particularly good. Abalone, maybe. What I actually quite fancied doing was getting a hold of an agate slice of quartz or something like that. I don't know if you've seen them before. You often see them in kind of spiritual or hippie shops, if you like, and they consist of sort of like a thin slice of glass, or at least it looks like glass, made from quartz and various other materials, and they've got a nice natural variation. I thought if I could find one that has a particularly clear centre with a more opaque outside, I could cut a triangle out of that and it would make a perfect inlay. But frankly, if I've learned anything with this build so far, it's that I really need to stop coming up with really long, convoluted, time-consuming things to do. So I'm going to give that a miss this time round, and I'm going to go with the easier option, which probably won't look quite as good, which is to use some more Perspex. So all I basically need to do is cut that equilateral triangle out my Perspex and inlay it in. One thing I am expecting is that the Perspex is sort of semi-transparent, so given the natural radius of the fretboard, it might actually have a bit of a gradient to it, but more sort of top to bottom than centre outwards, which I'm not particularly keen on. I do have some ideas at the back of my mind as to how I could remedy that, but let's get the thing cut out first. I actually want to draw the triangle on the Perspex first. The pencil doesn't really work on plastic, so masking tape to the rescue. The good inlayer people amongst you, of which I'm sure there are many, will notice I've put that in a sort of dodgy place really. I should put it much more towards the edge of the material rather than having it cut all the way into it. But you know what, in the interest of time, I don't really care. Let's crack on with it. So there we have a prism, which you can tell is semi-transparent. Now actually, probably want that to be point up from the perspective of the crowd rather than the player for it to make sense. I don't think it's exactly perfect. I lost my masking tape towards the end, but I think it's good enough. Now, as I said, I do have some plans for maybe playing with this, making it look a little bit better, but before I can do that, I need to start inlaying a cavity into the fretboard itself. So to do that, we need to mark it out. It's difficult, of course, because I have a flat-bottomed piece of material on a curved surface at the moment. But close enough. One thing I am finding with these kind of straight-edged inlay designs is that before actually trying to hog out any material, I just want to sort of score out the edge of the inlay itself, which I could do with a craft knife, but a chisel works just as well. So I think that's deep enough. This is quite thick material for inlaying. I've definitely got a good fit in the hole considering I'm struggling to get it out. But we're definitely getting most of it into the fretboard. The next thing that I want to do is actually just try and file it down a bit to try and get closer to the actual radius, because I want to see how much the transparency is going to play a part once it is radiused. So I was considering sticking it down, but to be honest it might just hold itself in place. Safety first. Safety of the guitars, that is, not my own personal safety. So apologies if you are seeing any shaky camera footage. It's a result of my camera being on top of the bench while I'm shaking the bench. Not that the bench is actually shaking very much. One thing that's become apparent is I do need to invest in some camera gear that's able to zoom in on my work without having the camera on top of the bench. Anyway, so hopefully you can see that is actually fairly flush with the fretboard now. There's probably about 0.2 of a mil on the bottom here, but it's close enough for the time being. Now it's actually giving a slight sort of semi-transparent mottled effect, and that there's variance in that depending on how close the ebony actually is to the back of the plastic. I suspect that when I fill that with super glue, you'll suddenly actually see that looking a lot darker once it kind of fills in that void. Now someone said to me, who shall remain nameless, why didn't you cut out the center of the triangle before you inlaid it, because on the album cover the triangle is just an outline. And that is true, but in my head I actually had, there's an early version of the LP which actually does have a solid triangle on it. But regardless of all that nerdy LP collector stuff, there is actually something I wanted to try. I wanted to try and create a gradient between the center and the outline of the triangle. Why I can't just do things simply, I don't know, but why break the habit of a lifetime? I really wanted to try it. So the plan is, if I can get this out, to effectively create a hollow on the back of the plastic, fill that with ebony, and then hopefully that means once it's stuck down the other way again, it should create a sort of a gradient effect towards the center. I don't know how good it'll look. If it doesn't look good, I can just cut myself another piece of plastic and stick with the solid piece. Let's give it a whirl. Alright, so I think I might have actually gone right the way through in the center, which isn't as bad as it sounds, because to be honest with you, I half expected that I was going to have to account for that when I actually come to do the final sand on the fretboard anyway. So I'm just going to embrace it, fill it with dust and glue, and we'll see what it looks like when it's dry. So here we have the finished article, which has gone okay. Unfortunately, you might be able to see some little white bits there. Those are bubbles in the super glue, just probably because of the slapdash way that I put the glue on. If I really wanted to, I could probably sand through the back of that and redo it. But either way, here's what it looks like in situ. Kind of cool. But to be honest with you, I'm just completely undecided as to whether I prefer that or just the solid triangle. The solid triangle I think looks neater, whereas this looks kind of more true to the original. I could in theory have another attempt at doing this, maybe trying to emphasize, maybe not getting it so transparent on the edges and without the bubbles. I don't know. What do you think? So I was going to leave it there today, but it was just nagging me that I wasn't quite happy with that pyramid, and I had an hour to spare still. So I decided to see if I could try and rescue it or improve it a little bit. So as you can see here, I'm using the Dremel to effectively sand through to that point where those bubbles are, so I can refill it and hopefully get rid of those as best I can. I also wanted to try and whiten the edges to make the outline of the triangle a little bit more prominent. So here you can see me using files to effectively clean them up and get rid of any black material that's on there. I thought about painting the back of them, but then I was worried about the adhesion of the paint when I come to actually glue it in. But then it occurred to me that super glue, if it's allowed to gas off too quickly while it's drying, does actually turn white itself. That's why we had the problem with the bubbles in the first place. So here you can see me basically covering the back in super glue and then using accelerator and then blowing on it to make it bubble intentionally. And here's the result for the second time around. And I think more than anything else, bubbles or not, that super glue trick has really done the job in terms of just outlining the triangle there. I'm much happier with that now. If I get up real close, you can see there's still some imperfections in the middle of the prism there, which is where my sort of old and new glue jobs join together, but there's not really a lot I can do about that, and I think I can live with that much more. So yeah, I'm definitely going to finish up there for today now. It's definitely a good place to stop. Next time we will definitely, I say definitely, there's always the chance something will go wrong, but next time I hope that we will be doing the next stage of the inlay, which is actually the metal heartbeat up the fretboard, which I really look forward to. Please do subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you next time. Goodbye.